Hello, everybody. I'm Ricardo Sandoval-Palos. I'm the founding editor of Palabra, the digital magazine of the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. First, let's start with Nicole Chavez from CNN. Nicole is a race and equity writer at CNN. She reports on communities of color and how inequality affects their lives.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Also with us is someone who has actually been a Palabra contributor from the earliest days. Meet Saida Pagán, a Los Angeles-based freelance journalist. Besides the pages of Palabra, you can follow Saida on LinkedIn and her new YouTube channel, American Stories with Saida Pagán.
Thank you.
I really want to get you started with, hopefully will be a little bit of a provocative question. Now, we really want to find out from the two of you if there is something that marked your career early on that you gleaned, say, from a conversation you had at an NAHJ conference. I mean, those conferences have always been, I think some of the most important parts of those conferences have been just the talks, the conversations you can have with your colleagues, your mentors, and people who've been in the business for many years. Is there a moment in your journeys that really kind of struck you and indicated to you that this is where I want to go, this is the path I want to follow?
Back in 2010, when I was a student, part of the NAHJ student projects, a moment where it really still, I don't know, I'm getting goosebumps just to thinking about it, was when I was standing in the newsroom and just looking at both students and professionals from all over the country. And with so many, from all over the country, we were all Latinos, but we're also so different because there were people focusing on broadcast, and back then it was newspaper and radio, and we were all there, all generations together, and just thriving and really reporting and doing what we loved. For me, it was a big part. I don't know, I remember that with so much cariño, because for me, starting out, being a fronteriza, being from the US-Mexico border, and still early in my career, and even early as a bilingual person, even because I even though I grew up in the border, my first language is Spanish. Back then, I remember how I had a lot of I didn't have a lot of confidence in even just my English and how I was going to report in English, when it wasn't my first language. So just being there and seeing there were people like me who were from, Latinos, first generation, people who were bilingual, people who only felt more confident in Spanish, just like me, and just being accepted and just being there doing what we love, that marked my career. And it just showed me that it didn't matter if I was different or I felt different, because I belonged there and I could belong anywhere I wanted.
Yeah, for me, actually, the pivotal moment was when it began. I was in New York City. Actually, I had driven there from Hartford, Connecticut. One of my coworkers, a lot of you know Diane Alvario, she told me about the fact that they were about to form this organization for Latino journalists. And I was so excited because I had been in the news business for a few years at that point, and there was a struggle in general. In the early days, Latinos were not taken seriously. Many people were not mentored to the extent that they should have been. And so the idea of having us all come together and unite and perhaps be respected and recognized was so important to me. I don't remember the name of the hotel. Somebody else does. Probably remembers all of this, but I do know that the group from Los Angeles had come out and they were so welcoming to us. And I knew that the following year I was probably, actually, I didn't know at that time, but the following year I was going to be coming out here to LA, where I am right now, and that there would be some connections, that I would know someone who could possibly open some doors or at least welcome me. So those were important points. And then during the late 80s, I remember asking to attend the conferences, and my supervisors, managers at the TV stations where I worked said, yeah, because we know that this is important now. And so for me, as a person who started out when there was so much, I don't know, so many challenges, shall we say, the fact that news management was finally recognizing the importance of Latinos, to me, that was very, very important. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because you have an intriguing job, is tell me about the race and equality beat. I know that CNN has done things over the years looking at race and how it impacts the nation. So what is your beat like?
Wow, it is a lot, you know. I think like my beat is one of those that it covers so much, and it really covers the what really the fabric of this country is. But also, you know, it is a big part of my beat as well is really, you know, covering the culture wars that you know, are happening right now in this country, and like the tension. So it's always like finding that balance, you know, then like making sure like we are highlighting our communities and like focusing on the good, but also like really exposing the inequality, and also, you know, the debates that are going on in this country right now.
What are you discovering about the Latino community? Where are we right now in terms of how we, for example, the political situation? We have an election year. So, what sort of things are you discovering about what we value and what we hold dear?
Well, one thing that and I think it's like the main thing, and this touches like, you know, politics and pretty much every other topic, you know, in this country, is that Latinos are deeply misunderstood. You know, we've been here for centuries, you know, so many generations, and still like up to this day, there's not a lot of understanding of like who we are, you know. So I think like that's the like number one thing when I think about like the coverage of like race and equality and like the Latino community.
And what is similar to perhaps some of the other ethnic communities? What do you find that they all have in common?
Oh, there's like so many things, to be honest. I feel like when I started on this beat, my number one goal years ago was that I didn't want to just cover the Latino community. I really wanted to learn about, you know, all the other communities. You know, like I have friends that are, you know, not Latinos, but I was like, you know what, like I really want to learn, like, you know, make it like really try to bring some nuanced reporting, even though like I'm not part of the community. And what I found throughout the years is that we're so similar. We share a lot of the same values. We're like family centered, hardworking. There's also a lot of generational trauma, you know.
Yes.
Every time I talk to somebody for my stories, or like just to like do research, and like we basically pick up the phone and we're like, oh, well, like you're Latino, like I might be you know, Asian American, but like in 5 minutes we are like we have something in common, and we're laughing about, oh yeah, like my mom used to do the same thing when I was growing up. So I think like that's the thing that I guess the bright spot in the middle of like a lot of very dark things that I cover, that I found a lot of like connection and commonalities in between, you know, groups that like I feel like if we stop, like as a society, like, you know, if we stop focusing on the differences and just saying like, oh no, they're over there and we're over here, you know, we could really, grow together, as a society.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you have some questions for me about what I do and my career.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really interested in hearing about how, you mentioned like, when you started your career, like it was a lot of times it was like you were the first person, the first Latina like covering English language news. And like, and I know throughout like all the years there's been a lot of those first moments, right? And I wanted to hear like how, has that been for you? And like if you had any advice for, you know, young journalists.
I would say the younger journalists have the advantage now of being perhaps now even better trained than in the beginning. Because what they would do back in the day, even before my time, was maybe hire people that didn't have a lot of journalism experience, who hadn't studied it. They might have studied law, they might have been teachers, they might have been had other professions, and then train them. And sometimes they trained them very well, and then sometimes they didn't. So I would say, just like anybody else, be extremely well prepared, study as much as you can, get out there. I started out at WABC in New York behind the scenes before I got my first job. And as often as possible, whoever was nice to me, I would ask, can I go out with you on a story and observe what they were doing? I want to give credit to one of my mentors there, a person who's no longer with us. Her name was Gloria Rojas. Now, many of you have not heard of her, but she was probably the first Latina or person of any Latin heritage to go on television in 1960. She actually taught, I believe, English and Spanish on one of the independent stations. And by the time by the time I met her, she was at WABC, and she was very kind, and she would let me go out on stories with her. So I would say just that kind of preparation, and be very professional. Remember that people will remember you years from now. I have someone on my Facebook page who I worked with at that time. He asked to be my friend on Facebook, and he says, Said, I remember how hard you worked back in the day. So people remember everything. And it's a small business. That's my small industry. So just be careful and do the best job you can.
Oh yeah, I mean, I as a myself, like as a mid-career journalist, like I spend a lot of my time right now like thinking about the retention of journalists of color, especially because a lot of my friends are just, leaving the industry. They are burnt out, they don't see they can develop. And just like speaking with you and like looking at your journey, like you've started in journalism, and like you've done work in education and communications, and like more recently you came back to journalism, and like obviously you have worked with Palabra, doing amazing work. So like I want to know like what inspired you, like in a way, to like coming back to the industry.
Well, I always planned to. I decided to go freelance for my family, to spend more time when my son was growing up. But I always had this idea that I would come back. I always decided, here's another bit of advice, never completely leave something that you love. Stay in it just a little. So I would freelance when I could. Even though I was doing a lot of education, and I was getting my master's too, actually, one in mass communication and one in strategic communication. But I never totally left it. I also did movies and television shows where I was probably one of the few people of color portraying reporters in different movies and TV shows. But I always knew that this was something I loved and something that I was fairly good at. And so I took my chances and came back to the TV station, government TV, where I had always freelanced over the years. And they were very happy, and I got to do some stories before COVID. I was the face of Los Angeles for the TV station during the George Floyd social justice demonstrations that took place here in Los Angeles, and I did a couple of documentaries, and then I found out about Palabra, and that changed my life completely. And I'm very thankful to Ricardo and to Valeria and the whole team at Palabra for really setting my career on a different course, because I had always liked print. I had always actually wanted to be a magazine writer. I don't know why. That's what I wanted to do. Not exclusively, but to be able to do that. And they made my dreams come true.
This is great. I love this conversation. And I really want to thank the two of you for taking time and really kind of helping us out, helping us celebrate 40 years of NAHJ and then kick us into the next 40 years. So thanks again for your time. We'll see you in Hollywood.
Thank you, Ricardo. And nice meeting you, Nicole.
Thank you both. Un abrazo.
Abrazos a los dos.